Oh, goddamn, what's that? Is Drew back? Yes, sir, back for 2022 here in January on the 10th. Back, still alive. Drew lives, motherfuckers, because you can't fucking kill me. Alright, I've been over on the Drewcifer channel making horror movie reviews and doing some album reviews and stuff, and just loving the distance that I've taken since probably August from politics, at least in the video sense. Now, obviously, you can't escape some of this shit because it's fucking everywhere. But it's felt really fucking good. Quitting Twitter has felt fucking amazing. You wouldn't believe what that does to your stress levels and just your overall view of the human race. Like, once you're actually just out talking to people, having conversations, and living your fucking life, you realize how much better life is than when you're stuck on fucking Twitter. So, that's just my personal thing. Everybody uses Twitter or use Facebook, whatever. I actually have not touched social media since July. And I couldn't be happier. I don't miss it at all, really. It was just something to do. I still have the gap on my phone where the Twitter app was, just right there in the middle. And, I mean, for the first few days I missed it. But, you know, there's something about the zen-like quality of the mountains of Colorado and the isolation and looking at the stars and being able to see satellites moving around and the beautiful clear skies when you're elevated like 10,000 feet above sea level. Really kind of clears your head a bit. Really makes you start putting shit into perspective. What matters, what doesn't. Well, as much as I like to distance myself from the insane shit in the political world, I mean, the world's even crazier now than it was 6 months ago. As much as I want to distance myself from that, the reality of politics is a reality of force. It's a reality that you just cannot escape. No matter how much you want to, no matter how much you want to just shut yourself off from it, you realize that a bunch of assholes have enacted these laws that are being forced on you whether you agree with them or not. And that is the nature of politics. So we got a lot to talk about, man. How much has happened since last August? I mean, my God, how much has happened since last August? I guess the best place to start, and this isn't actually very new news, but it's still pretty new news, and I haven't commented on it yet. Believe me, there have been several things I've seen over the last 5 or 6 months that I was like, that could be a video all by itself. That could be a video all by itself. You know, Joe Rogan gets COVID, beats it in like a fucking day, and all the goddamn outrage about this motherfucker took horse dewormer, and just all the bullshit that you've seen from a guy that beat the shit in like a fucking day. And then, on top of that, I have, much later, I have my own COVID story. Because I've had COVID. I got COVID in the middle of December. So it hasn't even been a full month since I had COVID. My wife has had COVID twice now. My wife got COVID in September. I guess we'll just go ahead and get into this. We'll get into my COVID story. So my wife has had COVID twice now. My wife got COVID in like early to mid-September. The first time she had it. And her symptoms were that she, like the sense of smell and taste was off. Other than that, you wouldn't know she had anything. She tested positive. Now, obviously, I live with her, so I go and test, and I don't have it, so I'm negative. This is back in September, okay? And she has no symptoms. Part of our company policy where we work is, you're off for 10 days, you get paid for it. They want you to get rid of it before you come back, which, on some level obviously makes sense. You don't want people catching this thing, right? So she does that. We don't quarantine. I mean, from the outside world, I was still able to go out and do all the things we needed. My hunter-gatherer self went and gathered the resources and brought it back home to my lady and all that sort of thing. Yeah. Well, we do that, so she's not getting out. She's not spreading this thing. I've tested. I don't have it. So her symptoms are just the smell and taste. Other than that, you wouldn't know. I mean, like looking at her, talking to her, she sounds the same. Nothing's different. She just lost her smell and her taste for a while. And I don't have it. And we did not separate from each other at all. We did everything the exact same way. So I never caught it. So months go by. And in the beginning of December, both of us get a kind of like, coughing up phlegm, your normal just sickness or whatever. And, just like a little mild cough, nothing hard, no sore throat or anything like that. But it's just like, I got this fucking phlegm, and you're just coughing it up. So I take a COVID test because that's the first time I've had anything in like 2 years. So I take a COVID test. Negative. I don't have it. She takes a COVID test. Negative. She don't have it. Okay. About a week later, I'm doing some stuff, and I'm like, I kind of feel like, almost like that a fever is coming. It's not here, but I can kind of feel like my body getting into that kind of, I don't feel like doing shit. I feel like laying around, which isn't normal for me. So I'm like, well, I'm going to schedule myself a test for tomorrow. And these aren't take-home tests. These are actually, we go somewhere and get tested. Those are all the tests that we've ever done. And the next morning I wake up, I'm supposed to be at work very early in the morning, and I can feel like I have the fever. So I, put the thermometer under my tongue and all that kind of stuff, and I have a fever of 101, which automatically tells me, okay, well, this is out of the ordinary because I don't get fevers. And so I call into work, tell them what's going on, like, hey, I already got a test scheduled for later today, but I got to take today off. So that's what I do, and I take that test, and it says positive. You're positive for COVID. I'm like, okay. By that point, by the time from when I called in the morning to when I actually take the COVID test, my fever's already gone because I took a couple of ibuprofen. So the entire duration, I have to stay out of work, paid, 10 days off. The wife then gets tested. The wife now has it again. Again, no symptoms other than the fact that we were, we got some phlegm. Spitting up some phlegm. But that's what we had for a week before we tested. So, yes, I had tested. I'm negative. Test again once the fever hits on, like a week later. Now it says that, you tested positive for COVID. So, we're off for 10 days. And aside from having that fever for the first 2 hours, neither of us had absolutely anything. I mean, basically my COVID experience was taking vitamin C and drinking a lot of beer. Because of the fact that I got, we had to stay home. You have to quarantine when we're getting groceries and stuff like that. We're having to do like the curbside contactless stuff because, we're not dicks. We don't want to spread this to anybody because we understand what this can mean for a lot of people. I can just say from my own personal experience, COVID for me was the mildest cold that I've ever had. I say this as someone who I was trying to think, like, how do you gauge this? And the way that I would gauge this is I've never even had a cold before, like where I had any kind of a cough or spitting up phlegm or anything like that. I've never had that without even having a sore throat. Like, I never even had that. I had a fever for the first 2 hours, basically, of my COVID experience. The rest was drinking beer and just taking vitamin C. That's what I did. Now, I'm not saying COVID's fucking bullshit for everybody. Obviously, it's not. But I feel sort of like this verified my thoughts on COVID for the last year and a half. Because I had seen so many people at my job get it. And I had seen them come back in like a week. I had seen people from different ages, different genders, all that. Different, what I could see is like people who, you see some people at work that you're like, well, he seems like a sickly kind of guy. Or you see some people that are like, man, that person's tough. Like, I've never seen them miss a day. And the reaction seemed to be this exact same for everybody. Everybody that I knew who had it, with one exception, and that person was my 84-year-old grandma. She's still alive, but she had COVID and pneumonia at the same time, and it kicked her ass. She had to be in the hospital for a while. That is the only person out of like 40 people that I know. And everybody from work, again, like I said, have had it at least once. A couple of them have had it twice, but again, they bounce back, and they pretty much have had the same experience that I had with COVID. And again, the wife having it twice, you would never even know she was sick, basically. You would never even know she was sick. So that's my own personal COVID experience. I guess you could say that's my wife's 2 times having COVID. So just getting that out of the way before we get into some of the stuff. I know you're like, well, why are you talking about this? You were just talking about the world of politics. Well, because it's such a hot topic right now. I have to get that out. I don't think anybody that knows me online or whatever knows that, because I don't have social media anymore. So yes, less than a month ago, I got COVID. And for me, it wasn't shit. I mean, it was, like I say, less than a cold for me. But whatever. The important thing here, and the reason I bring that in, because we're getting into COVID, is I still remember, I'm old enough to remember, 6 months ago, where I had people telling me that it was ridiculous to be concerned about vaccine mandates. Okay, just because I haven't talked about any of this shit in like 5 or 6 months. I was told that was silly. Relax, dude. Nobody's pushing vaccine mandates. The vaccines are there for people who want to take them. At the time, the vaccine passport shit was started. And I was saying, well, this is absolutely ridiculous that they're going to... Like, the fact that the government in these states is going to mandate that you have to show proof of having this little medical procedure done in order to go inside a fucking restaurant. Now, if the restaurant wants to do that, again, I'm a libertarian. If a restaurant wants to do that, that's the restaurant's business. But the problem is, when the state imposes that on every business, that is a problem. Because now those businesses and those consumers don't have that freedom to voluntarily interact with each other. To make that even worse, Biden came out and said, oh, by the way, any business that has more than 100 people is going to be forced to have them either vaccinate themselves or to provide weekly testing. Now, this is obviously beyond state. This is federal. This is every business in the goddamn country that has more than 100 people. You're going to have to be vaccinated or do weekly tests, which I do believe are supposed to be at the business's expense. Like, the business is supposed to set up a way to take care of all that. Okay. Well, that's fucking egregious. Beyond the pale. Now, even Biden knows that Biden can't just do this by fiat. So he tries to push OSHA to do it. This is another workaround. And by the way, the libertarians should be all over this, and I haven't heard any of the libertarians talk about this. This is just another fucking reason you don't want the government in shit like OSHA. Now, if it's going to be state by state, that's one thing. I mean, I don't agree with even the states doing shit like this. But at least when it's state by state, you have a fucking chance of combating some of this crap. Whereas when it's just top-down federal, you don't. So OSHA is the Safety and Health Administration. That's basically, it's centralized by the government. So the federal government is going to use this because in the old terms that people would say, the camel's nose is already under the tent. You already let the government in there to control some of these standards. So naturally, what the government always does is tries to expand its power. This is a perfect example of the government trying to expand its power. And they're going to try to push all of these businesses to have their staff vaccinated. And we can get into some of the vaccination stuff later. And it's not even an instance of, oh, well, you just don't like the vaccine or something. I honestly don't care. I honestly do not care. And I've said this from the beginning. I think if you have underlying conditions, if you're immunocompromised, if you're elderly, I think you really should look into getting the vaccine. But I've also said for a year and a half now, for your average person, you aren't going to need a vaccine for this. I mean, my own personal experience has, like I said, has just kind of verified that for me. The same for my wife, and the same for every person I personally know with the exception of one. And that person was an elderly person who had some underlying health conditions. By the way, they're still alive. I shouldn't say should have. But but yeah, I'm not against vaccines at all. Like, at all. Get them if you want them. I'm glad they're there. I'm glad that people have that option. But I also know that for the vast majority of people, I know for my age bracket and my gender, I had like a 0.03% chance of death. So, I mean, it's just, you balance this out. But here's the thing. Let's say you completely disagree with me. Totally fine. The vaccines are there for you to get if you want the vaccines. Okay? Like, I don't understand how that got to the point of being so complicated that we have to start compelling each other. Not just compelling each other, but using these ass-backwards methods of compelling each other to bend the knee, basically, which is what the Biden administration is trying to do with OSHA, because they know they can't do it themselves. And to make it even worse, this thing is going to the Supreme Court. They've had their hearings on it, and it looks like the Supreme Court, good news, it looks like the Supreme Court is going to strike down the employer mandate for this. But what is super shady about this entire system, what's super shady is the Biden administration most likely knew that the Supreme Court would do it, but just by announcing the mandates, they knew that a bunch of businesses would bend the knee because they want to be in compliance, obviously, whether the Supreme Court shuts it down or not. And the problem is, anytime these administrations or these politicians push some shit that SCOTUS eventually reviews and says is unconstitutional, there's no penalties for that. They don't get in trouble for that, even if they know they're doing it beforehand. Because they know, at least for a while there, people are going to have to obey what they're saying. And as long as they can get that compliance early on, then it doesn't matter. So from the Biden administration standpoint, it's going to be a win no matter what, because if they can scare businesses into thinking they're going to be forced, a bunch of those businesses and a bunch of those people will go ahead and get vaccinated, because that's what they want. That's what the Biden administration wants. And there's not going to be any consequences when SCOTUS eventually shuts it down, which SCOTUS at this point has not shut it down, but they're hearing it. I actually listened to the courts hearing the arguments the other day, and it sounds like with a 6-3 conservative leaning Supreme Court that they are going to shut down the vax mandate for businesses. Probably not for the healthcare workers, but at least for businesses, they're probably going to do that. That's what it sounds like. That's what the arguments sound like. So at least you have that. Because again, at the end of the day, I want voluntary cooperation. I want action between people that is mutually beneficial and free. You should be free to choose these things. And especially when it gets down to, you're getting a shot in your body. I disagree with you if you think horrible things are going to happen to you if you get the shot. Now, some people have had inverse reactions. Some people have had bad responses physically to the vaccine, but those are very few and very far between. I think those are outlier cases. I don't think this thing is dangerous for you to get, necessarily. Now, again, I'm not a fucking doctor. Go talk to your doctor if you have any sort of concerns on that. But the entire point is, who the fuck am I to force you to get it? And who am I to tell you you can't have it if it's available? If it's there to get and you want to get it, get it. I mean, for plenty of people, I think this is a good idea. But I would say for the majority of people, or at least the majority of people that I know around my age group, it's not necessary. I don't think it is. But if you think it is, go for it. That's freedom. That's you being able to choose. So that's the whole situation with the vaccine mandates. I think we've kind of covered the COVID thing here. COVID's still rolling on. This is another reason I think the vaccine is somewhat useless. I mean, for a person like myself, and I'm not trying to say I'm above anybody, but for your average, just, especially if you're like in your 20s, you're healthy, you don't have any of those underlying conditions, you're not asthmatic, you're not morbidly obese or something like that. I just can't help but think that you're going to be fine without getting this vaccine. Now, if you want to get it for some other reasons, go for it. I'm not saying it's bad. I know from what I've read from the CDC, because I was looking this up because I've had COVID, how long my natural immunity lasts or whatever. It seems to suggest, from what I can see from the CDC, that it'll last up to 6 months, just like the vaccines will. Though it says the vaccines give you a bit more robust of coverage. But you're still protected because you got the antibodies for up to 6 months. That's about the same as the vaccine. So, okay, there you go. Another reason I'm just a bit hesitant about the vaccine is because it's pushed so hard as the only possible thing you can do to help prevent COVID or help not get COVID or help not get fucked up when you have COVID. And as we've seen increasingly, especially with this Omicron variant, that the vaccine is doing less and less to stop infection. Even 6 months ago, it wasn't rare that a vaccinated person got COVID. It's exceedingly unrare now. It's not rare at all now that a vaccinated person gets COVID. There's hundreds of thousands of breakthrough cases, which I think at a certain point you got to come up with a new name other than breakthrough. Because I don't know. I know they mean breakthrough means you're vaccinated and you still got it, but breakthrough kind of implies that it's a rarity, but it's not. It's increasingly unrare that a vaccinated person gets it. I've seen Gene Simmons get it. I've seen Paul Stanley get it. I've seen Corey Taylor get it. Whoopi Goldberg just got it. All these people are vaccinated. They got it. Bill Maher, vaccinated. He got it. It's not rare. I'm just giving you some celebrity examples. It's not rare that a vaccinated person still catches and can still spread COVID. So the idea that vaccines are going to be the end-all, be-all to COVID is just factually inaccurate as far as I can tell. Okay, moving on from COVID, I would say it's a little lighter topic, but it's not. We're going to shit on the Biden administration a little bit more for this one. So originally it was proposed that the IRS was going to monitor every bank account that had over $600 in it. Now, they have recently backed off of that. If you haven't seen Dave Ramsey's video on the $600 monitoring for every bank account, that video is actually pretty fucking epic, where he goes off, because, the entire point of this was that, we got to crack down on these millionaires and billionaires who aren't paying their taxes. So we're going to monitor everybody's bank account that has over $600 in it, because that's how we're going to get the millionaires and billionaires. And as Dave Ramsey points out, because millionaires and billionaires keep money in the bank. Yeah, which is, if you know anything about economics and how these people maintain their wealth and grow their wealth, they don't just leave their money sitting in a bank account. But anyways, apparently they have backed off of that because it sparked a huge backlash. People are like, you're going to monitor my bank account because I have a paycheck in it. Go fuck yourself. That's retarded. Okay, the Biden administration is still going to have that standard for transactions on things like Cash App, and I think Venmo was one, PayPal I know was one. So if you have transactions in a year of more than $600, you're going to have to report that, because they see money and they want the money. That's basically it. The government knows that a lot of people have been out of work, or a lot of people have fallen on hard times. A lot of people are trying to make that side hustle work. They're trying to get that supplemental income. Well, the Biden administration is letting you know, well, we see you and we want our cut. That's all that is. Now, the standard used to be for a year, you wouldn't have to report to the IRS if you made less than $20,000. And it encompassed over 200 transactions a year. So you had to have over 200 transactions a year, and you had to make more than 20 grand in a year before you would have to report this shit. They've lowered that to $600 in a year. So all the little men out there who were told, and I did a video on this channel, that your taxes weren't going to go up if you made less than $400,000 a year. Yeah, that was a fucking lie. Somebody should post that meme. I should post that meme right here. The dude with the mic, he's like, so that was a fucking lie. And that's exactly what that was. That was a fucking lie. If you're making any money on the side, when I was doing the goddamn podcast, basically, I would now have to pay taxes on that money. I mean, you'd have to pay taxes off of me and my friends drinking beer, talking shit, and people just, this isn't even like a product we're selling. This is a product we're putting out, and people are like, oh man, you guys are good, so we're going to throw some cash at you. No, the government wants their cut. They want theirs. They don't have enough money yet. They don't have enough money. I mean, they steal $4 trillion out of the economy every year. They ain't got enough money. Like, more than half of every dollar spent in Washington right now doesn't even come from the taxes. They just print it up. They don't have enough money. That's the problem. The problem is they ain't got enough yet. They need yours. So if you're, fucking, I don't know, what are you, knitting sweaters or blankets and selling them on fucking eBay, getting paid through PayPal, the government wants their cut. What do you got for me? What do you got for me? Think of the roads. Think of the roads. You don't want potholes, do you? Okay, well, I mean, if you're just trying to keep the goddamn lights on because the government forced you out of your job in the middle of a pandemic and you're knitting sweaters, some little old lady knitting sweaters because the government's fucking failed her repeatedly. Granny, we want your cut. Give us our cut, Granny. Anyways, I've ranted on this thing long enough. Politics is a shit show. I don't think that's ever going to change. The Biden administration is just the latest wing of it. But I will at least say this. I mean, at least there is some pushback. At least there is a growing amount of people who seem to be, people with political power who seem to be kind of waking up to, man, it really doesn't matter who's in charge. It really doesn't matter because it's just a constant growing of state power and government authority. And I think people are starting to see it. I probably should have spent a little more time talking about some of the arguments from the Supreme Court, because I don't think some of these justices understand what their job is. But we'll get into that at another time. This video is already long enough, 25 minutes. I'm back. I'm going to try to do some of these rants from time to time. If you want to see something different than politics, I do have a channel called Drucifer, where I'm doing horror movie reviews, because I fucking love horror movies. And I'm having a good time over there, cleansing my mind from all the political bullshit. But until next time, guys, later.